I'm so excited someone asked, so shout out to Ace Lord for pointing it out. I specifically aimed that skeleton to the side to show off the hyoid bone. So what is this bone and what is its evolutionary purpose, such as the association between a larger hyoid and smaller testes in howler monkeys? Even though this bone looks like a mini lower jaw, it's actually involved in a bunch of other processes as well. For instance, it is not attached to any bone, and is instead attached to thyroid cartilage, which is part of the larynx or the voice box. So it's an integral part of us being able to speak. Not only is it an integral part because of it being attached to the voice box, but also it is the bone that the tongue is attached to and allows our tongue to move. Lastly, it also helps keep our airway open, and if there's an issue with the bone, it can actually cause sleep apnea, which was talked about in that last video the comment was under. Most people haven't seen or heard of the hyoid bone before, and when you look at your common Halloween skeleton or your school anatomical skeleton if you had one, it's not there, it's nowhere to be seen. Because since it's not attached to any bones, you'd have to suspend it, and that's a bit difficult. And in drawing and animations, it also makes it difficult, so it was pretty much ignored for convenience. Also, the hyoid bone is not the Adam's apple, it's actually right above it. Plus, most people have a hyoid bone, while only about 50% of the population have an Adam's apple. There's also quite a few fun facts about this bone. First, for my true crime fans out there, due to the location of the hyoid bone, it is extremely hard for it to fracture naturally. So if a forensic scientist will find a fractured hyoid bone, that means that most likely there was strangulation in the crime. However, this is only true for adults and not children and adolescents, because in them, their hyoid bone is actually still flexible and may not break even with severe strangulation. This is because the hyoid bone is not completely calcified or hardened, which is called ossification. Ossification of the hyoid bone is actually extremely important in cats, and if the bone is ossified or not will tell you if the cat can purr or roar. So if the bone is completely hardened or completely ossified, then the cat can purr but not roar, such as in house cats. However, if the bone is incompletely ossified or is still flexible, then the cat can roar but not purr, such as in lions. Maybe this is one reason why babies are so much louder than everyone else. They are basically scream roaring. So from here, the hyoid bone gets really interesting in animals, especially in woodpeckers and the howler monkeys that I mentioned in the beginning, because they both have obscure shaped hyoids. So for the woodpecker, it goes from their tongue down and up and around their skull, and it looks super weird. And scientists think this is because it helps in cushioning their brain and keeps them from getting a concussion when they're pecking the wood. There's actually a study just released about this of doing a video analysis on woodpeckers, and they think that due to the way that their skull moves, that there is nothing acting as a shock absorber spring because it's all moving at once, which means they think the hyoid bone actually has a more integral role in keeping them from getting a concussion than previously thought. And now for the fact that I'm sure most people are watching this video for, the howler monkey hyoid bone. Their bone is shaped like a cup and it actually amplifies their voices and creates the loud whoops and howls that we know them for. But a study in 2015 found an association between the size of the hyoid bone and the size of the testes in the male howler monkeys. Specifically what they found was that for the howler monkeys with the larger hyoid bone and thus the louder voices had smaller testes. And for the monkeys that had the larger testes actually had a smaller hyoid bone and thus quieter voices, and they think this was happening because of the social environment that they lived in and how they competed for females. So for the monkeys that had the large hyoid bone and thus louder voices, they specifically lived for one male and a group of females, and they competed by screaming at the other males. So they needed to be louder because they needed to attract females before copulation. And then that means that they don't really need larger testes. However, for the howler monkeys that had the larger testes, they lived in groups that had multiple males and multiple females all together. So they needed to compete during copulation, thus they needed the larger testes and didn't need the large hyoid bone. Though it's still a bit weird that there is a trade-off there, and the scientists aren't sure the evolutionary purpose of having that trade-off, because wouldn't you want both?